Hello, hello. My name is Kim Addis. I am the president and founder of Frame of Mind Coaching, and you have just joined the Frame of Mind Coaching podcast, where we invite leaders from all over the world to join us on the podcast to get coached live and in person. Today, we have a guest all the way from Switzerland. His name is Nathanael Zurbruegg. I hope I'm saying that right. And he runs a company called Unlimit You. Nathanael, welcome.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for having me here. Hey Kim, so good to see you and meet you and talk to you today. I'm so excited.
So tell us a little bit about you. You run this company called Unlimit You. And I read a little bit about your profile. You have a very interesting history. So fill us in. Who are you? What do you do? What is Unlimit You? And I know that you impact people's lives, but tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Switzerland in a very little town in the mountains, which was beautiful. It was always too small for me because I wanted to change the world, to impact people. And so that actually happened because so I was diagnosed with an incurable chronic illness with 1 year old, which affected my own kidneys. And I'm not going into the details. You can get the whole story on my website that I will share later on. But to say that I shouldn't be alive for 6 times by now, been through 40 operations, 3 failed kidney transplant, a hearing loss of over 80%. And yet I had so many, as well, depression, emotional breakdown. And yet at the same time, when I look over my life, past life, the last 32 years, it was just a blessing to realize that it doesn't depend, the limitations don't depend or can affect our life truly, but we can depend on what we want to do out of our life. And so it was, I started in 2016, very small with a website, as a speaker, traveling the world. That time it was still for free for people to book me before I then added the company Unlimit You in 2019. And so to that, in addition, I added like a victorious mindset mentoring, which I help people exactly to take their limitation, to take their circumstances, and to not get influenced by them, but to create a victorious mindset that they can rise above the limitation, the problems, the circumstances in every given situation and in any given, life area, whether it's physically, emotionally, business-wise, or spiritually, or mentally. So that's what I do today, and I love it. Corona, of course, as well as everybody else, has very limited me in terms of traveling, but grateful for the technique today that I can share the story and help people around the world just out from my bedroom. And I love that.
You love that. I love that too. Okay, so you basically had a very challenging life by and large, and you took that experience and you turned it into a business that's designed to serve and help others. And so you're offering mentoring, you're a speaker, and you really look at when people have difficult circumstances that they are in, to not make that the definition of who they are. I'm translating for you a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
perfectly said. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So awesome. And you've been doing this basically since 2016, and you speak in front of audiences. I'm assuming you tell your story, and you're setting a great example for people based on your own life experience and your own, in a way, your own struggle. So where are you now? What is your challenge that you're confronting that you want to talk about today?
Yeah, great question. For me, it's at the moment a real, when you feel like you went over the pain and everything is going smoothly, but then the next challenge appears. It's like you feel like you're over the mountains, but then when you are on the mountain, you realize there's a bigger one ahead. And so that's where I am today. It's in regarding of emotional health as well. Currently, I'm cleaning a lot of emotional pain outside of my life. Um,
How are you
in
doing
re-
that? What is your approach? What's your process for cleaning up some of the emotional struggle and pain you experienced?
it's a lot focusing on getting back into the past, picking out specific events that look like not hurtful when I was back in the time, but then become very, hurtful and realize, okay, it did actually more damage than I realized, and I didn't acknowledge that. So that's one thing. And the other thing is like writing everything down with the people I have specific relationship that might have, in a sense, meant to treat me well, but it kind of, happened the opposite. And so I do that at the moment to really, yeah, to get deeper into myself and into the past
So
to
that
clean.
sounds like you're journaling.
It's similar to that. It's not a daily journal. It's just a specific. I pick a person or two people a week, and then I think about, okay, where is where triggers me, what they do today or what they say today to me that triggers me quickly, and then I write down everything. Hey, almost like a bad letter to them, but I don't give it to them. It's more
Okay.
like for me to clean up.
Okay. And does that help you?
It's really helpful because I realize in my own life there's so much, everywhere there's a stone laid on something, and I realized that it's really easy to step on those stones and don't do anything,
Right.
but it's more beautiful when they're away and then you let the grass grow again
I like
below
that
it.
visual. I like that visual. Okay. So going back to your challenge, you're saying, okay, so I've overcome a lot, but I'm ready for the next thing.
Yeah.
So what is the challenge around that? Is it that you don't know what the next thing is? You don't know how to define it. You don't know how to find it. Like what's the challenge around that next mountain you're describing?
I think it's the challenge of being in a transition. Um, I'm awaiting my full kidney transplant for the reason that there were so much more medical improvement the last 2 decades. After I had my third
COVID than it ever has been. And I'm leveraging technology a lot more through my activities on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok now. And so I want you to reconceive what your reach is and who your reach is. And think about it in a much, much broader way. Because in a way, I will suggest to you that it's limiting to be traveling and on the road and only speaking to these audiences. Because there's only so much human capacity that you and I, that we both have. And it's exhausting.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I truly get that. For me, it's not, I realize the impact that I can do, and I do that as well with a lot of podcasts, which is about approximately once a week. I'm on a podcast, which is great. For me, it's like the specific desire to go somewhere new and to go somewhere. I'm not necessarily, necessarily in connection to go somewhere to how do I say that, to reach more people, that as well, but it's more like I feel like the way I'm wired, the way I grew up, I always was like, I was differently growing up. I was growing up in the hospital. I was here for a time. I was there for a time.
Right.
And I was like, and so it was, at the same time, it was limiting me because I realized that the time I was in the hospital, which is a past thing, that I was limited, and now, or even maybe I would say after age 15, there was a time when I finally realized, okay, now I can do more than just staying the right four walls that I have always been. And so it has become a passion in terms of traveling itself. And the reason why I started in 16 with global speaking, I realized that the story and the passion with traveling could easily be connected.
Right.
And of course, I do podcasts and I love it. For me, it's, to be honest, it's just not the same,
I
It's like,
understand. So you're saying I want to physically get out of here.
yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is to step into plane, knowing on the other side I will land and can inspire people. But it's not only the inspiration that I can give itself on the other side. It's also the getting away, seeing new things, looking, looking people face to face, into their face and being physically there.
Okay, so I'm going to throw one more thing at you, and you can tell me if I'm off base or this might be helpful. But it sounds like, and I get it, right? Like when you're stuck at home, it's hard to find that rush, that high, that feeling of excitement, that, I don't know, feeling like you're stepping outside of your comfort zone a little bit. When you say going somewhere new, it's like stepping into a place of unknown. Is that accurate, what I'm saying right now?
I wouldn't say the places are the ones I know all the time. Of course, there are places that I've been before, but it has been many different places, and there were always some added new places. I was, especially one place I went a lot, but that was for a conference, which I not necessarily spoke myself, only for one time. But all the other places, they were new. They were like new people, new, doing business with different businesses, organizations, and that's what I love about the specific thing that I was able to do that is missing at the moment. To really know about other cultures, know about other people face to face, be with them, hang out with them, getting out with them, getting through the streets of the city, learning new things. And so this is something that has always been on my heart. And even, of course, my dreams are still there. It's just the transition that makes it really, to find out how to deal with it.
Well, I understand that. Like there's a limitation we're very all physically dealing with, right? Like we're stuck. We're stuck at home and you're doubly stuck. You're extra stuck, right? Because not only you're stuck at home, but you're stuck because you need to be close to home. And so, it's very interesting because I find that when we have very real boundaries, very real limitations, sometimes we have two options. One option is to just say, nothing for us to do. Oh, well, right? Stuck. But sometimes those boundaries force us to get a little bit more creative. So when we look at what are the things that really turn you on, sure, getting on a plane, yes, stepping on new territory, all of that stuff. Unfortunately, we can't do that right now. But if we look at the essence of that experience, which is the newness, exploring other cultures, etc., I always ask myself, is there a different way to achieve that goal? Is there a different way? Is there, in other words, when I feel stuck or when I feel trapped, what's really limiting me is my beliefs or my imagination, my ability to come up with a new idea, a new way to experience what I'm looking to experience. And so, yes, you're on podcasts. Perhaps you should be a podcast host. Perhaps you should invite people from other countries to interview them. Perhaps there's a different way of connecting with people from other places and other countries that fills that need, that creates a sense of excitement and curiosity for you. And again, it doesn't need to necessarily just be a podcast scenario. Maybe you're writing a book about people who are in difficult circumstances and how they have overcome them. And you're interviewing these people. Again, I'm throwing ideas at you, and it's not the ideas that are necessarily important. It's the concept that when we have limitations, right? Our mind isn't limited. Our imagination isn't limited, but we often use our real life physical limitations to also limit our imagination, our curiosity, what's possible. And we say we're stuck. What's interesting is you described your four walls, your four white walls. And I look behind you and they're not white, but they're kind of beige, your walls, right? And that brings curiosity to me because if you didn't like those walls, how come your walls aren't full of color? Right? It's a strange concept, right? It's right. But in a way, you've created a very similar environment as that which you grew up in. And again, I can't see your whole house, so I'm making a judgment here. But it's interesting to me, right? So what can you bring into your own home, into your own life that's full of color and excitement and interest so that you're not as limited as the situation puts you in?
Yeah, great question. I think the four walls, so the meaning that I was saying, it was like the not necessarily the white walls, but the environment in the hospital, the limitation connected to,
I
connected
understand.
to
I get it. But
so I don't have an issue with with white walls.
No, I know, but you're using an analogy, but in a way, very often we recreate our past because we're used to it. Right? So yes, we're using the analogy of the white walls, but you've recreated that exact environment for yourself. And it's something that you've instilled in your life. It's something that you've created because you're used to it. It's familiar perhaps. But I'm challenging you a little bit to get a little more creative, to say, how do I spend more time with other people in other countries, even though I can't leave my home? How do I make my environment a little more interesting, a little more sexy, a little more exciting to be in, right? What can I do right here, right now that's a little different? because what I'm hearing is there's a lot of the same. So you know what? Like honestly, this is a much, much larger conversation because I feel like you've been through a lot and you're working through things step by step by step by step. And you're kind of jumping ahead and saying, okay, I'm ready for the next step. But there are little techniques or strategies that we can implement immediately to create a different feeling that allows us to see that big mountain more clearly. Right? Because you're like, what's the next big thing for me?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to see because you're in the same environment, but you can change that environment even though you're not leaving Switzerland. Yeah, does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. And that's
Okay.
why I actually moved a few weeks ago to here to do the new season of the emotional training. That's what I do at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm doing nothing. So it's like I'm always trying to be creative and really thinking about what could be the next step, what
Yeah.
needs to be away from the way.
But
And yeah.
but I'm going to throw something else, right? Not just thinking about what could be the next step. I want you to physically do something different, right? So maybe bring in, I don't know, a new piece of furniture and paint it pink and blue and red and right? And it doesn't matter if you throw it out after, but like change your physical environment.
Yeah.
Right? Because what you're saying is, I feel trapped in this environment. Well, let's bring that physical touch, that physical sensation to your world as well. Yeah. Nathaniel, I would love to talk to you a little bit more if you wouldn't mind staying on with me after we conclude the podcast. But for now, I want to say thank you for joining me. I know that a lot of people feel stuck. I know that a lot of people feel trapped within their walls, whether they're white or blue or red, doesn't really matter. We feel trapped. And the question becomes, how do we bring something new into our world? How do we experiment with our physical environment so that we feel fresh, so that it doesn't feel old and stale, and that we create an environment that inspires us? But thank you for sharing your story with us, for sharing your time with us.
You're welcome.
How do people find you if they're interested in your story?
Yeah, so you can go on nathanaelzurbruegg.com. You will probably put it on the show notes.
We will put it in the show notes because, yeah.
And you can get all the story. You can as well there visit my website, my business website, that you can check out the services that I bring. And so click on there. There's even a free ebook available for you to download if it helps. 4 steps to unlimit your life. That way you can start from A to Z to go from who I am to living out your dream and overcome your limitation. So
Amazing.
check it out, and I would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, everybody, and Kim. Thank you.